Not only they're getting their ship stopped, they can't get crew because no one wants to be kidnapped and put in the Royal Navy. So this was killing American manufacturing or killing American trade. All right. Any other questions? Did you put down a license for embargo, the one next to it? We'll put that down. Let me explain what that is real fast. I just use my slide. I have it here. Oh, here's one of those of Jefferson as a prairie dog puking up gold to the British. I don't get the cartoon either. And there's Napoleon as a wasp. I don't know what's going on, but it's a prairie dog. All right. The Embargo Act, that was right there. I think it was right next to, is that right next to the blockade? I'm not going to drink the, but here's one thing you have to add. Except you can trade, there's an exception if you have a license. And Jefferson would give licenses out. Well, the Republican administration. The thing was, though, if you criticize the embargo, no license. You criticize the embargo, and your business fails. It's in shipping. And so here are people lined up. This is a Federalist cartoon. The effects of the grand system of shutting down ports against the English, because most of our trade was with Britain, lined up to get a license, and Jefferson is basically trying to coerce them. And it's implying that since it's mostly hurting the British trade for helping the French, there's a Napoleon. By the way, Napoleon was not short. He was average height. That was British propaganda. Dogs back then sound exactly like dogs today. Bow wow. See it? Very much the same. That's 1809. But the point is this. You had to come back. If you criticize the war Federalists, you could not get a license. What were those aspects that restricted immigration and banned criticism of the government? Do you remember those laws? It will be on the test. Yeah, Alien and Sedition Acts. Doesn't this sound like that Sedition Act? You criticize the government, you're punished. It's not a law. But that's immediately what the Federalists said. You're doing exactly what you complained about us. And any criticism, so they started to attack and to give names to the embargo. It was a disaster. The economy, not yet capitalism, but there led to a bust, led to a depression. I'll show you one little thing because I just find this rather amusing. Because few people know this, but see that? Giant snapping turtles called grabbies used to roam the shores of the United States, and they could be tamed and used to stop people from smuggling. So here's trying to get super fine whiskey to a British ship, but he can't because the old grabby got to see the license. And it said, how Nixon, oh, this cursed old grabby. You ever seen a snapping turtle? These are like this tall. And they could run like the wind. Yeah.
A turtle in there.
Did you? Yeah, they're fun. They're fun. Did you pet them?
No, I cut it as far away as I wanted to, and I didn't walk back into the water.
Don't mess with snapping turtles. By the way, do you see it? You see it? We'll grab me. See it? You see it? Yeah, that was the attacking embargo back. Did it? Snapping turtle are long. Don't mess with snapping turtles. Who was elected president in 1808? Jefferson couldn't run again. Who's elected? That's the next one down. James Madison. Yep, that's Madison. One elected, and then this is a lot. He got rid of the bill of the embargo. I just find this one kind of amusing. This is a rather gruesome one. So that's the old grabby, and it's bit. And he's cutting the head off, ending the embargo. But if a snapping turtle grabs you, they don't let go. And you say, the only way I'm going to get it off is to cut the head off. What happens if you cut the head off? Besides the snapping turtle die. They don't grow a new head. It grips harder than blocks. You can't get it off. It's impossible. And so that's the point here. They stopped the embargo, the problem still. Gruesome cartoon. All right. Any other ones we did not know? Any ones we did not know? So we got maintenance bill number 2. will only trade with whichever belligerent will respect our neutrality rights. Which country said they would respect US neutrality rights? Can we get that? For Makin's Bill number 2, was quit stopping American ships. France. France said, but they lied. France said, we will respect American shipping rights. And the US embargoed Britain. That's Makin's Bill number 2. Whichever country respects our neutrality rights, we'll respect them. That's right here. It's called the Cadore letter to France that they would do it, like my thumbs up. The big thing about that one was, if we will trade with France, which we didn't do much trading with France, we embargoed Britain, and that would lead directly to the War of 1812. You see the stepping stones right there. Britain actually put in the orders of council, but after the US declared war. But that wasn't the only reason. Did anyone get Tecumseh or Tippecanoe? This is really big. Tecumseh is one of the most important Americans. They really respected Tecumseh. He was a force. I mean, the name Tecumseh meant something in the old Northwest, well into the end of the century. It was Tecumseh. He's one of the most famous generals in American history. His middle name was Tecumseh. He was born soon after this, named William Tecumseh Sherman. And his brother's one of the most famous senators, John Sherman. Tecumseh. Can we get Tecumseh? What? Tecumseh? Try to stop. Yeah. And what? Yeah, all the tribes here in the old Northwest, here's Shawnee. Remember there are other confederacies, Little Turtle and Blue Jacket back in 1792, 1793. Remember there's Pontiac, King Philip, the Powhatans. They all fought each other, and Tecumseh basically said, we got to unify and quit buying their alcohol, quit buying their rum and their whiskey, or trading it and giving up everything you know. We got to quit fighting. And it's worked. He was very practical. What's the term for practical? The most important of Jefferson's philosophy. You remember that term for practical? Or
Pragmatism.
pragmatism. Very good. Here, I'll show you the picture. It's coming up to the Battle of Tippecanoe. That's Tecumseh. He liked British Army uniform. And that's his brother. And his brother also helped get this thing going well. Tecumseh said basically, hey, we got to fight together or we'll get killed. His brother was a religious leader. It's a polytheistic religion, so it said, the gods are behind it, something to that effect. By the way, I know how to people are going to try to. It's phonetically spelled. I'm sorry, I don't know where the accent is. I think the accent's here, but it might be here. Anybody want to try it? It's Swawatawa. I know I'm butchering it. You want to know what citizens of the United States call it as well? A prophet. The PH, not a PH. He told, he got some of the youngest and the most kind of aggressive young men to join this Confederacy from tribes all over this area by making these very outlandish predictions, including he announced that he was going to make the sun disappear. Exactly when he said the sun disappeared. And once you make the sun disappear, you got credibility. And so all these people came, thousands came. They named the area where his village was called Prophetstown. How do you get the old sun thing? And then he sold. He cheated. The United States got, their plan was by 1804, you get a bunch of the leaders of the various nations, they so-called the tribes, nations, to come to Philadelphia, the center of US science at that time, to look how powerful the United States is, give in. And got an almanac with the exact date and time of the they do one thing. And he sat on it and had a calendar and a watch and just sat and waited and waited. And then the sun will disappear. And it was, the problem is once you make the sun disappear, people want more. So you got more and more outlandish prophecies and predictions. Like if you believe enough, you will become bulletproof and 10 feet tall, which might be a problem down the road. And Did anyone get William Henry Harrison down for it? If you do not get him, you got to get him down. William Henry Harrison was the governor of Indiana. He's from a rich patrician family. Harrison led militia and a future. The biggie is he had cannon with, you remember Great Shot? Remember Great Shot? And they marched into, the Indiana Territory was down here, and they marched towards Prophetstown. Tecumseh was in the south trying to get the powerful Creek Nation to join the Confederacy. And he told his brother, don't do anything stupid. Across from Tippecanoe Creek River, Harrison dug trenches and sat and worked. And all the young men in Prophetstown were like, we got to attack, we got to attack, we got to attack. And they finally attacked. He nearly overran Harrison's forces, but a brave shot turned the tide. And Tippecanoe will be one of the most decisive victories in U.S. history. One of the most important victories in American history. Tecumseh would get back and the Confederacy shattered. The Confederacy is shattered. Now, I'm going to give you the answer for the last two. The last two on there, nationalism and the effect on the woodland nation. I put down Native American. They still call them woodland nation. See on the bottom? The War of 1812 and the Battle of Tippecanoe had the same effects. So let me give you that. So I'm going to have that one. Can we look down at the effects? Very bottom. War's impact. War's impact. I forgot what it said. The war's impact. This Tippecanoe was the last chance that American Indians could stop the United States. The Spanish. So this would end the Indian threat to the frontier. And they blamed the British. But it would end the threat. Never again would they be strong. And then after the War of 1812, there's no way they'd be strong. Now, and so every other battle that's going to happen from 1815 on, it's a tragic, horrific last stand. One of the biggest defeats in U.S. military history happened in Montana. What battle? Yeah, a little big one. It was already in just how the United States, how brutal was the United States going to be conquering this land. And after being humiliated at Little Bighorn, you can imagine how brutal it's going to be beyond belief. And so this was it. They might have had a better chance back in 1794, but this was the last chance. Tecumseh would flee north and join the British because he had no choice. And he would die at the Battle of the Thames, which is on there. Battle of the Thames. Small victory for the United States in the War of 1812. Right down the middle, you see it on the right-hand side, the Battle of the Thames. Small victory by the United States, led by Harrison. Hey, there's not many victories by the U.S. They're almost all defeats. This war was a disaster. You have to kind of search for one. But Harrison would win again, and Tecumseh would die. Harrison would be so popular for this victory, he'd be known as Old Tip for the rest of his life. When he would run for president 29 years after Tippecanoe, he used one of the most famous and first political slogans in American history. His vice president was John Tyler. So his slogan was Tippecanoe and Tyler too. 1840, everybody knew it. Old Tip is running, and his campaign for his whole entire platform was the Battle of Tippecanoe. I won them. Anybody know what's unusual about William Henry Harrison's presidency? It happened. Only about a month. The shortest led president in American history. Oh. He'd be the first of 3 presidents to die of cholera. So, they blame the British for that. Oh, let me get the other one. Anybody know what nationalism is? Look down the bottom, nationalism. Anyone know? So the last one on the bottom of that sheet, see nationalism? Nationalism is intense love of your country. Intense love of your country. But the big thing is why? Why? Because it's your country. You catch my meaning on that? Patriotism is you love your country for the values it stands for, the Declaration of Independence, for all men being created equal, for rights. Nationalism, I love my country because it's my country, therefore I love it. My country, it's your people. So this is blind love. And this is a relatively new thing. This kind of idea did not exist in the French Revolution and the Industrial Revolution. But it spread like wildfire after Tippecanoe and the War of 1812. And what was the source of this love? I've moved. But people live in the United States. They didn't call themselves Americans. They called themselves New Yorkers or Virginians or wherever. In fact, if it's 1800, and you would have said, look, there's a group of Americans, their assumption would have been one of the woodland nations. Or right, Shawnee, Pawnee, Tuscaloosa, something like that. Instead, it all changed. After Tippecanoe and the War of 1812, which kind of go hand in hand, citizens of the United States, this is what we have to give for nationalism. Citizens of the United States started to refer to themselves as Americans. And this is a big deal. That's aren't I special? This is my continent. Nobody else has a country on this continent, from Canada down to Argentina, call themselves Americans except for the United States. It's ours. It's ours. And American Indians became horrific terms like savages or we keep going on that. Like that. Well, that means we have every right to take this. Take this. Take this. And for some Americans, all the way down to Argentina. It's all ours. It's our country. Nobody else. Mexicans don't call themselves Americans, yet they're just as much on the continent as citizens of the United States. Or for that matter, Bolivians or wherever it might be. That's a pretty shocking thing if you think about it. That is nationalism. It's ours. That means we own it. Tippecanoe was a big deal. All right. I gave you a little detail on that. Any other ones you do not know, I'll answer right now. Look at the list. Any ones you do not know, anyone not fine, I'll be glad to help you. Yeah. Say it again. Oh, Horseshoe Bend. So Horseshoe Bend and Creek War right down by, is that about 2/3 of the way down? Is that right? So let me think. Creek War, the United States used the War of 1812 as an excuse to destroy the most powerful of the Southwest tribes, the Creek. So that's the Creek War, the most powerful of the tribes. And the culminating battle was Horseshoe Bend, a decisive U.S. victory over the Creek. And the leader of the U.S. forces there was Andrew Jackson. That's the first time he's going to become a national character. But the other thing is this, that's really important to know about Horseshoe Bend. The U.S. didn't do it alone. They had some regular forces, some militia, but also charity and Chickasaw. Other tribes joined in because they were jealous of the Creek. So the U.S. did it with the help of other tribes. That's what we call divide and conquer. And so we used the enemies of the Creek to destroy the most powerful tribe. And then what did the U.S. do to the Cherokee and the Chickasaw and the Choctaw? Destroy them. Use one tribe to destroy the others and then turn on them. And divide and conquer works. That's why Tecumseh wanted the Confederacy. That's why Tecumseh is so important. He almost did it. In Ohio at night, they would tell little kids if they wouldn't go to sleep in the 19th century. Little kids from the United States. Let's sleep. All the way to the 20th. Tecumseh's a great American. I said, really well. Any else? Glad to answer. Anyone on it? You notice I'll add things and you know what I think is important. We got it all done? Let me make sure you got the three causes of the war. The three causes of the War of 1812, neutrality rights. I mean, quit stopping our ships. That's neutrality rights. The other reason, they would say security on the frontier, but that was really, they blamed the British for American Indians fighting back. They blamed the British. And lastly, the U.S. wanted land, Florida, but especially Canada. The U.S. is going to try to invade Canada in 3 spots. Here, here, and here. By the way, how well did they do in these elections? They lost here, here, and here. U.S. got routed when they tried to invade Canada. They won in Canada and Florida was the other thing, right? And thus, in fact, in Detroit, a US force surrendered without firing a shot. They were tricked into believing they were outnumbered 6-1. The General Hall was a drunken fossil. I bet you didn't know fossils were drunk. Well, they can. Anything else? The treaty ended the war. Treaty of Ghent. What was that term I gave you for keeping things the same?
That's cool.
It was a status quo, I need status quo. Christmas Eve, December 24th, 1814. Ironically, it happened 2 weeks before or peace was 2 weeks before the last battle of the war. The last battle of the war, just so you know, was Battle of New Orleans. The Battle of New Orleans, that right in the Treaty of Ghent. And that was a decisive US victory. Who was the commander of the US forces there? Andrew Jackson. The big thing about that one is this. Jackson, besides becoming a big hero, Jackson's victory made Americans think they won the war. By no means did the US win this war, but it felt like we won because we won the last one. So New Orleans is just going to be huge in kind of the history of the United States. Look at Preston Valley. It's also very, it's right in the sugar plantation. Going to be awful to fight there. There's a nuclear power plant that the British had to go around for the battle. It's all right there. There is a nuclear power plant. It was built, this might shock you after the battle. It's kind of weird to go to this. Look, oh, there's a nuclear power plant 200 yards away. Still never used to do. Any others? Any ones we don't know? Anything? You remember how the British would recruit enslaved people to join their army for the freedom? They did it in this war too. Tapped up in Chesapeake in 1814. What were they called? That was Colonial Marines, and thousands came. And the US blamed the British for inciting the slavery. They only got about 1,000 out that followed the British. Eventually they'd be settled in Barbados. They literally called them Americans. No A, just Americans. They still live there. So it's like, oh, you're an American, you're an American, American. So let's just go. Any others? Let me add one. Oh, yeah.
Four oxygens. That people use.
Yeah, Warlocks were pro-war communists, and they're all Republicans from the West. Most famously, Henry Clay, a few others I'll have to tell you about a little bit later. And that's where we start getting the term hawk for war. And so the Republicans who pushed Madison, who didn't want war, pushed him into it. Then once he signed the war declaration, it became his war. And it was a disaster. It's amazing how bad prepared. And then we didn't recharter the bank. So we had a financial crash right with the beginning of the war. I mean, just insanity. They didn't recharter the bank, which is kind of funny. Remember, Madison didn't support it. Okay, let me add one more thing. So one thing that's really important. Do you have Francis Scott Key? Do you know what Francis Scott Key was? We gotta know what Francis Scott Key was. So let me add a couple things for this. What happened was this. So the British, I'll tell you two of them. I'll tell you three. The British tried to invade in 1814 after Napoleon was finished, and they had a three-pronged invasion. I just gotta tell you this. And so Napoleon was basically finished. The British now can send reinforcement, and they didn't want to take over the US. They want to chop off some pieces of land, especially New Orleans. And the other thing was this: they hoped the US would break up into pieces. And at the Hartford Convention, the Federalists almost seceded with the Union. They just about left. So it almost happened. But attack here, and attack here. Here. Remember the Battle of Saratoga? Revolutionary War. The British were trying to cut off New England again. But on the Battle of Lake Champlain, the US Navy then built the ships on the shore of the lake 17 ships, both sides had 17 ships, kind of put whatever cannon they could on. The US Navy won a decisive victory. They stopped the British invasion. It was like one of those, there's no way they could win and they won. Ending this front. It's considered one of the greatest US victories, Captain Douglas McDonough. And this ranks right up there with, I'm going to World War II battles like Leyte Gulf, Philippine Sea, or Midway. I mean, they're that big of a victory. And then the other plan, back in 1813, you also have York down as one of the places you had to identify. That was the colonial capital. And militia, when the US crossed over and attacked it with the British forces were gone and burnt down the capital. Today we call York Toronto. The British plan will do it to the United States. While US troops are here, you train both coasts back, there's no roads. But the Chesapeake and burn Washington. And that's what they did. This failed, they went to the Chesapeake and took Washington, D.C. And what they did? They routed US militia. They nearly captured the president. I mean, it just from capturing the president. Got to the executive mansion and burnt it down. Then went to the United States Capitol, burned it down. If you go to the US Capitol today in the basement, it's on the same foundation. There are still scorch marks from 1840. There's still marks with the fire. You can see it in the cement. And in the executive mansion we call the White House today, the outside facade survived, and there are still musket ball holes in the columns. They're still there to this day. So if you take a tour and walk out the front door, like the first tour I took, I walked out the front door and looked up, and there's musket balls. They're right there. You can see about 6 shots. Now, if you try to take a picture, you'll meet the Secret Service. Because they're everywhere. Huh?
Can't take pictures.
Or outside, yeah. This is called the Chesapeake campaign. We're not going to go into the details of this. They burnt down Washington, D.C. I don't have time. They burned it down. There's a plaque just northeast of the or northwest of the Executive Mansion, White House today, where it says, "This is where President Madison watched the British enter the White House." And then there's one near the Capitol. This is where President Madison watched the British enter the Capitol. So he kind of hung around, watched, mounted his horse. He just barely got his family out. What a humiliating defeat. Burn it down, and then they went up to Baltimore. Oh, that's what the Capitol looked. That's what the Executive Mansion looked like. The back is all gutted. They kept the facade, rebuilt the inside. There's so many scorch marks they have to use a lot of whitewash to cover it up. Whites. Today, it's got the same facade, but they rebuilt the inside about 70, 80 years ago. They just kept the same facade when Harry Truman was president.
About the new
So-
decorations.
Huh?
About the new decorations of office.
The Oval Office wasn't built till 49, so it's relatively new. I know it's a lot of decorating work, and they're building a ballroom that's gonna be bigger than the White House. So, Baltimore, let me explain really how. Francis Scott Key was a young lawyer, and he was in Baltimore, and a friend of his was picked up in Washington, D.C. and being held by the British. The British were coming to Baltimore, becoming a really important harbor city, and were gonna burn it down. So this is all Francis Scott Key. The British were going to Baltimore. So they burned Washington, not just a raid. They went to Baltimore. Now their plan was much like the Washington, D.C. plan. Fake by sea, main force overland, take it, burn down Baltimore. Humiliating defeat for the U.S. They weren't going to hold it, just burn it down. The unfinished Fort McHenry guarded the entryway into the harbor. It's unfinished. And the British plan, shell it. It's called reduce it, but make them surrender. Then sail into here. Then the main British army comes in, burn it down, sail out. Humiliation. Big victory. So here's McHenry. That's what it looks like today. It's a national park now. And the thing is that Francis Scott Key went out. I put it down because I kept forgetting the name Venice. Then as soon as I wrote it down, of course, I didn't forget it. You won't need to know that, but he went out to one of the British ships and he was interned there. Said, "No, we're about to attack. You can't get the release of your friend, Dr. Venice." So he watched the whole attack. September 13th and 14th, 1814. And the thing is, okay, they used regular cannon. Cannon's a gun, direct fire, so relatively low trajectory. We know what a gun is, probably. Do you know what a mortar is? Yeah.
It's like way up in the air.
Lobs shell really high. Rough. So they had mortar boats. And they would do that and hit the roof, which is usually thinner. So plunging fire. Now, cannonballs then, the iron cannonballs, not very effective against brick, they just couldn't rush it. Grave shot, not effective at all. And take a cannonball and they'd hollow it out and put black powder in it. Not an explosive, but a little bit of it. They'd have to have a fuse. And they would try to kind of spin the fuse behind it when they put the cannon in. Then when they fired it, it would ignite the fuse, hopefully not blow up in the cannon. And hope they would then explode on the roof. So think about night with a slow moving cannonball and fuse, you can see it. It's flying in the air and follow the flight of the cannonball. And then, do you know what a bottle rocket is? Have you ever seen a bottle rocket? It's a stick with a little, basically just a little pot of gunpowder. Now imagine with a barrel of gunpowder on a log. And then we just kind of get the right angle and just shoot it out like that. And they got up in an amazing firework. And hopefully it would land on the target and the rest of the gunpowder would explode. Most of it just went off. Right? But they had these rockets, really loud. Black powder is really loud. So that's what they're going to be shelling with. And that's what Francis Scott Key saw. The shelling of Fort McHenry. So before the sun went down, the last thing he saw on the fort was this massive flag. Look how big the flag is. See him? It's over 4 stories long. Over a 4-story building. And they cut off a big hunk of the bottom. After the battle, got scissors and cut off little pieces for souvenirs, including one of the stars. By the way, how many stripes? Counting? Can you see it? I know you all got to 15, right? Just nod. That's when they decided after this, our flag would be too big, we'd keep adding the stripe for each state. That's why they went back to 13 stripes and how many stars for each state. So, what did he see when the sun came up? The flag was still there. So he wrote the defense of Fort McHenry. 4 stanzas. It was a poem, but he had a song in his head called To Anacreon Heaven, the Anacreon Society's song. And then what's called the Star Spangled Banner. It's at the Smithsonian. This is one of the reenactments. If you go there, Fort McHenry, on certain days during the summer and in the battle in the fall, they have these boat ships, shoot fireworks, that big bomb. It's really cool. Fort McHenry is a neat place. That's where it's cut off. It's at the Smithsonian Museum. You walk in and the flag's just massive. Temperature. It's temperature controlled now, light controlled. They actually went through and reconditioned each individual flag. So it is really about as vibrant as you can imagine. Behind it is like right here, they have kind of a flag behind it. So you can see the colors a little better, but also get an idea how big it actually was. They cut off this much for souvenirs. I'm not going to get my piece. Which is, you gotta be kidding me. And I wonder which Yahoo stole the star. Well, he had music in his head. He had a song in his head, and he wrote that. Or he wrote the poem. And you start seeing it sung a lot by the 1820s, 1830s to this song called To Anacreon in Heaven. But people only know the first verse. They don't know the 4th verse, or the 4 other 4 verses. One of them actually complains about freeing slaves, how evil the British were for doing this. That's our national anthem. And you'll see, what will we see in the morning? Twilight, stars and stripes, ramparts, the walls of the fort, rockets, the bombs, what they call those shells with the fuse behind. On Gate Brooklyn night, the flag was still there, as far as Spangled Banner, ripped it up. That's our national anthem, and it would be written there. Last part about that, the British, when they couldn't reduce Fort McHenry, pulled back, never burned Baltimore. They never did burn Baltimore. But one thing I'll tell you really quick, 1916 became our unofficial national anthem, 1931 the official. They never played it in front of sporting events. I would have been seen as really silly until World War II. And then it kind of went away, and then the Cold War and that little rush of patriotism came back. But this is after the Anacreon song. And it, you know what the Anacreon Society was? It's a drinking society. They would get really, really drunk and sit around the piano and sing the song. And it was designed to be kind of singing, they go really low, then scream it out, maybe toast each other. Yeah, so the US national anthem is based on frequency. Has anyone chorus or try to sing like really sing it well? I mean, like hit the low notes and then hit the high notes. It's really hard to do. Only a few of us have that vocal range. Few of us. I would do it for you though. And but it's meant to be screamed. That's why everybody else's national anthem is not going to be all kind of sung by average voices. Ours really hard to sing. Really hard. I mean, everyone's just got to sing, but they're not really trying to sing well. So that's fail, and then we have Battle of New Orleans. What's going to be on the test? Just review. Previous compromise or great compromise. Other stuff. My mind froze. Oh, Assumption Bill, Hamiltonian economics, Shaded Rebellion, Federalist Republicans, Jefferson's philosophy, and Tecumseh. Arthur, I mean, what's the things you can find on your own, I guess, if you don't know? I just told you Washington's invasion. I just told you Baltimore. I already told you, I told you the Battle of Lake Champlain. Did all of it, so I got most of that. Okay, use the rest of the period then. If you don't have any questions, I'll come around and answer, but finish this. I will like tomorrow or look at your notes. 24. I will give you good credit for that. Does that make it?
I don't know.
You believe you? Okay. I get it. You held on to it then. And for some reason, she had you put all the assignments back in the baskets. Did she do that? We just did it.
Yeah, all done. I believe.
That's done? Got one, good. I added a few things here and there.
Did it yesterday. Class. Yeah, I didn't catch.
Oh, okay.
I didn't catch the turn it in memo. I just said,
I'll get it.
me and Jack did it
And
together.
thank you for being good to the sub. She said you guys were great. Except for one.
She hasn't liked me. No, she likes Jack. She's Jack's coach. She's big.
Oh, yeah.
That's why she would speak to me and not Jack, or River, or Nate. But no one. Because I'm the future debate.
The pretty deaf, big boy.
It could be because I told her I did future debates to get plug-in for free.
Oh, I got one.
But she didn't really think it was that can back into the really. But it was worth a shot. Not too.
So while you do that, I'm gonna check the roller coaster.
It's looking pretty sad day today, you know, passing for those people.
I could have sold by, well, President Trump announced 100% tariffs on the blue in China.
So keep buying clothes for the benefits. So
The stock market dropped 50 points. The S&P went up 20 and now it's back down 10. You guys are riding the wave. Yeah, fine.
no, but you can't do it. I lost that money, so
I'm actually pretty.
it's not this now.
Have a company for few and moments.
Or my chair for free or something.
No, that's just.
I just didn't know it was in my thing.
So I narrowed it down. One page was followed up.
Don't care. Why would I even make it this way?
Yeah.
I'm going to that. If you get right. So it's a great.
The one that
I need the ball out. I'm ball out. One build state.
that's really what it looks like.
I'd be happy with
I'm not gonna hide it.
It's the same with the. He's a king. I'd be honest with you. He's a the silence.
Good.
Ever since I think
Of course, that means you gotta do really good ones. Does everybody remember short ideas? You know, quick little stuff, 1 to 2 sentence summary, good example, what it led to, why it's important. And if there's any kind of, well, if we lose time, I'll just adjust, not a big. Okay. I will collecting the notes on chapter 7, give you some credit for that at the beginning of the period. Just so you get a little few points, even though I helped you a lot there. And they threw away my batteries.
Are you a baseball fan?
Yep,
What's your team?
I'm a Royals fan. Huh? They're okay, but not. Huh?
Really?
Are you a baseball fan?
Yeah. Okay, I'm only a baseball fan because Toronto's good this year.
I'm only a fan. They're Kansas City. They had a good, they've been there, they're not horrible, they just didn't quite get you or hit it. Which you kind of need for baseball.
I didn't want those.
Well, yeah, Bobby.
A little bit. Huh?
Yeah, Bobby would.
Wait, it's also.
Yeah. And then it drops off after him.
Yeah.
There's a few other really good players, but yeah.
Just you didn't do.
I'm a fan of
Sounds good. Wow.
seen him play 3 times, so.
Makes up for the Leafs being really bad this year.
Huh?
The Blue Jays being good makes up for the Toronto Maple Leafs being terrible.
Of course, hitting in the Mariners, look like they might sweep them.
They do it. I yeah. Glad that's.
Oh, Mariners.
Glad that. I want the Mariners. No, he doesn't.
I like the Mariners. And I want Montreal, but, or, not Montreal, I mean, Milwaukee, but I don't know. I don't think it's gonna happen.
Baseball is not the American.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for inviting. Saying this, knowing I'm Canadian football, Canadian hockey side, probably Canadian baseball.
That's done. We'll get it done though, then you have the break. What the heck, right? Goodbye, good luck.
I love the water bottle, but it wasn't me.
I'll leave it there, whoever was there. I got some cards here. Oh, good. It surprises them. It's when 78 today. What's up? But I came back for you. Thing is, you don't want. See you tomorrow.